Are you leaving?
I actually do have to do some stuff, but if you want, they can
Okay, no, that's okay.
come back and check in.
That's okay. Okay.
Thank you. Hi. We are attempting to do a Google Hangout so that we can record the presentation, put it up on the Moodle site, and if anybody wants to log in, they can do so and watch it live. So we'll see. Hopefully that'll work out. At any rate, I want to make sure that you're able to see what's going on here. So I think everybody knows me, Lisa Cooperman, joined by Pauline Saavedra, who is our other Assistant Dean of Studies and does pre-med advising. Some of you may have met her already, but she also supports applicants throughout the summer and application process with helping to review personal statements and provide feedback, as do I and your advisors. And she also assists me, along with folks in the Career Development Office, to do mock interviews when that time comes. So if you're doing a traditional mock interview, meaning a traditional interview, you would probably meet with either Pauline or I. If you're going to do an MMI, which is a new format for interviews, then we partner with the Career Development Office to set those up and try to simulate that. So those are some of the folks that will be helping you throughout the time. If you're not going to be here on campus, we can do mock interviews via Skype. So technology makes it easy to do that. We're joined by a few of our pre-med advisors in the back, Joe Tansky in the chemistry department, Elizabeth Collins in biology, and Teresa Garrett in chemistry. Some folks couldn't be here today, but Susan Trombetta in psychology, Mingwen An math, James Chally, STS, Jenny Kennel in biology, Janet Gray in psychology. They're all members of the committee, and these folks have served on the committee for a long time and are very knowledgeable, so you can please talk with them as you move through the process and talk to me. We're here to support you so that you can submit the strongest application possible. We're also joined by our pre-med interns, Mia Chatterjee and Fatima Mihia. They have both successfully negotiated this path, and they're going to talk about what their experience was applying to medical school. And they're very empathic to what you're feeling right now, because they were there a year ago, and but they survived. So they're going to tell you how they survived. What I'm going to do is go over AMCAS. If you're applying to osteopathic schools, AACOMAS is similar to AMCAS, but I don't do a full presentation on that. But Fatima is going to a DO program and can talk about some of the differences between the application process, though there aren't many, if any, at all. One I can think of is the conversion of the units, but pretty much they're the same. They're both open right now. You have access to AACOMAS and AMCAS and can begin filling out the application. So in the presentation, I'm going to talk about how AMCAS works, some of the application dates, sections of the AMCAS application, the submission process, and then some things that are internal to Vassar and what to expect. And you're going to hear these things multiple times. It's a lot of information. You really only have to approach it one step at a time, and we're going to be here to guide you through it. The emails from me through Moodle will start to pick up substantially over the next few weeks, because we're going to be going into the cycle, be able to start submitting in June. So that's my way to communicate with you is via email mostly. And I try to answer a lot of the frequently asked questions ahead of time as you're working through the process. So, you know, take a look at those emails, and they're all archived on Moodle. You can always have access to them, and there's lots of resources on Moodle, too, that I hope that you'll use. I created Moodle a few years back primarily so that you could check on your letters of recommendation in the gradebook function, but then realized that I could minimize the length of the emails that I was sending you by putting things in Moodle and not clogging up your email inbox. So basically, how does AMCAS work? So you should know that AMCAS is an intermediary between you and the medical schools. AMCAS does not make admissions decisions. They are packaging your application and making it available to the medical schools. So you submit your application. Like I said, you have access to it now. And then, see, now I don't know how to go back. Here we go. I'm a PC user. I should always say that at the beginning that Max make me confused. I think there's supposed to be something in these boxes, but I'm not sure. Anyway, you submit the application. It goes to AMCAS for processing. It can take 4 to 6 weeks for your application to process, and then at the end of June, they will begin to send applications to medical schools. So if you submit on June 2nd, it's not going to the medical schools on June 2nd. Now I'm going backwards. So these are the application dates. Like I said, it's open. You can begin to submit on June 3rd. On June 27th, they'll start transmitting the apps to the medical schools. August 1st is the early decision program deadline. September through December are the application deadlines, but you really don't want to wait that long to submit your application. I would just ignore the fact that there are deadlines and try to get your app in as early as possible. June or early July is considered early. Medical schools work on rolling admissions, so you want to apply early. Early is better. You have to have submitted by 11:59 Eastern Standard Time, the deadline date. If you're submitting that late, then you're way behind in the process. But I have to tell you this because that's what they say. And they need to have the transcripts 14 calendar days before the application deadline, but we're not waiting for deadlines. So 143 schools participate in AMCAS. AMCAS also has a letter of recommendation service, so we post the letters to AMCAS, and AMCAS delivers them to the medical schools. You do not wait until your composite letter is posted to AMCAS to submit your application. You don't have to wait for your MCAT scores to be received. You don't have to wait for your transcripts to be received. When you complete the application, you can submit the application. You can add additional schools after you submit the application, and the other pieces of it will be added to the application after or while you're working on it. Of the 143 schools, 141 of them participate in the letter writing service, which is every school that you'll be applying for. Otherwise, we use virtual evals for the DO schools, and I don't think that there are any allopathic schools that you would be applying to that wouldn't use the AMCAS letter writing service. I think it's like a dual BA, MD program that doesn't use it. So, if you haven't already, this is how you access the application on AAMC's homepage. You just click in and you'll register for the app. There's information about the MCAT and the fee assistance program. You should apply for the fee assistance program if you feel like you may be eligible before you take your MCATs and before you submit your AMCAS application, because that takes some time to process as well. So what's included in AMCAS? I'm going to go through each of these sections and talk about them in a little bit of detail. So you're going to register for the app. If you've already taken the MCAT or registered for the MCAT, then you have a username. If you can't remember what that is, then you click on Can't Remember. You aren't going to recreate another account, so make sure that you use the same username that you were given when you registered for MCAT. It's called an AMCAS ID. So you'll only complete the registration if you don't have that AAMC ID number. So this is what the main menu looks like, and you can go in anytime and you can look at whether or not you've completed a section. So you can access the application either through these buttons, each of the individual sections, or through the buttons across the top. You'll see over in this section your name, your AAMC, your AMCAS ID, and then what the status of your application is. So right now this application is not submitted. When it's submitted, it'll say submitted. And when it's processing, it'll say processing. It won't start processing until your transcripts are received. And then it'll say processed when it's done. So you can always check on, if you're not sure what's the status of my application, you can always check on here. And you can log in and log out of the AMCAS application at any time. Over here you'll see there's a print transcript request form. So there's a form that you're going to provide to the registrar with your transcript request that has your AMCAS ID number on it. They're going to send it along with your transcript to AMCAS, and they'll be able to match it up to your application. You can request your transcript anytime now. You just check a box that says hold for spring grades. So there's no reason before you leave campus to not request your transcript. I don't request transcripts. You have to do that through the registrar's office yourself. And you'll need a transcript for every school that you've ever attended, even if those grades have been transferred back to Vassar. Study abroad is a separate category, which we'll talk about. But if you've taken courses at other colleges or you took a course in high school and got college credit for it, you'll need a transcript for that. Your GPA will be recalculated with all of the grades that have transferred to Vassar or not, that you've taken at the undergraduate level. So even though some grades might not be in your Vassar GPA, they will be recalculated for the purposes of medical school. So you'll see here you can print the application. There are the letter request forms, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more. But the main page allows you to negotiate the different parts of the application. So this is pretty straightforward, the identifying information. You're going to enter in your legal name. This is pretty straightforward. And then you're going to enter in all the schools that you've attended at the undergraduate level. You see down here there's a little section about advisor release. I'd appreciate it if you could select yes there. You're not releasing your application to me so that I can see it. What you're doing is releasing it. I could see your MCAT scores, but we can also download the list of schools that you applied to so that we know where you are sending your letter of recommendation and making sure that we're on the same page. So it also enables the statistics to enter in for Vassar. So please release your application to your advisor so that we can work as a partner as you apply for medical school. So schools attended, this is what the summary page looks like. All of the schools that you enter will be on here, and you can add another college. In most cases, you're going to need to request a transcript. In some cases, for study abroad, you'll have a transcript exemption where you won't need a transcript. That's if you enrolled directly in a foreign university. You didn't go through a U.S. institution. Like you went to UCL and you were enrolled directly there. You're not going to get a transcript for that. But if you went through Vassar, on a Vassar program or any other U.S. institution program, then you're going to likely get a transcript. And they have lots of tutorials that you can watch, and there's a video tutorial on how to enter the study abroad coursework. See, sometimes I jump ahead. I don't follow the slides, but this is a good tutorial because there can be some confusion. You're going to enter in the U.S. institution that you went through, the foreign institution that you studied at. You're going to get a transcript from the U.S. institution and a transcript exemption from the foreign institution, but you're still going to enter in the coursework. And then there are some other cases, and that's where the tutorial will help you, and we can talk if you don't fall in that category. If you went through a Vassar program, like on the Vassar Wesleyan program, then you don't need an additional transcript. Your grades are on your Vassar transcript. So this is what the schools attended summary looks like. There's an institutional action section, which I hope I'll have a chance to talk about later, but it bears repeating. If you were ever received a conduct violation or any kind of academic violation, even if it was a warning, you should disclose it on the application. Minor warnings and infractions are not going to impact your medical school application. You know, you were at a party with 30 people and everybody got a warning. Fine. You move on. You write it. Medical schools aren't going to be concerned about something like that. When a problem can arise with a minor infraction is if you don't disclose it and it comes out after the fact. So sometimes medical schools will send dean certification forms to the dean of studies, and the dean of studies will consult with the dean of students to see if you have a record on file. And if you do, we will disclose it. We hold the records for 7 years. So if there's a minor infraction or any infraction, honesty is the best policy here, and if you want to talk about that, you can talk with me or your advisor. If you're not sure if you have something on file, you can check in with the Dean of Students office. But you know, trust me, something minor isn't going to hurt you. It's just better for it to not come out after the fact, because then they'll think you're trying to hide something, and that's not the good scenario. So here's the biographic information, which is, again, pretty straightforward. Your address, ethnicity, race. Some of these questions are here to gauge if you come from an underrepresented category, if you live in a rural area, or if you immigrated to the U.S. or different categories that they have for folks who are underrepresented in medicine. So they've added questions in recent years to try and get at that from different angles. So it's not just ethnicity and race, but socioeconomic background, geographic location. So there are a variety of things that can put people at a disadvantaged status or be in an underrepresented area. So how do you enter the coursework? You'll see here there are lots of tutorials here. I'm going to be sending you out emails via Moodle to talk about some of this stuff again, but it can be confusing because it's a lot of information. But basically, you're going to enter everything exactly as it appears on your transcript. You're not going to convert the units to credit hours for the AMCAS application. That is one difference. For the AACOMAS application, they want you to convert the units to credit hours. One Vassar unit is 3.53 credit hours. You will need that when it comes time for secondaries. You'll convert at the secondary phase, but not for AMCAS. For AACOMAS, you'll convert at the primary phase. So just when you request a transcript, you should request one for yourself so that when you're entering in the information into AMCAS, you're entering in everything exactly as it appears on your transcript. You're going to indicate whether or not there was a lab, which is important because we don't have separate credits for labs. One thing that comes up during the application sometimes, and this happens more for DO schools and allopathic schools, is a school has a problem with our unit system. They'll say that they need 8 credit hours of chemistry or 8 credit hours of physics. And when you add up 3.53, you don't get 8. You get a little less than 8, right? So sometimes the schools challenge that, but then we work with them to help them understand that all of our lecture courses that have labs have separate labs. We just don't give extra credits for labs. So if that happens, don't panic. We can work together. You're going to see it when you're filling out the application. You say, oh, I don't meet the minimum requirements, but don't worry. You do, and I'm here to help you if a school has a question about that. So this is what it's going to look like. You're going to classify your courses. So there, you see there's this course classification, and you probably all have heard of the BCPM, which is your science GPA, biology, chemistry, physics, and math. You are going to indicate what category you think the course falls under. If you have neuroscience courses that have 50% or more biology, then they're a biology class. If you have a psych stats course, that's going to be a math class. Use your judgment. I think you probably know if a course has a heavy science component and if it doesn't. And they're going to verify your application, and that's that processing time. And if they think a course doesn't fit, it's going to slow down the verification process. So you want to be diligent about fitting those courses into the categories. And there's a section on the AAMC website that has a course classification guide to help you to say, you know, where does this multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary, where does this STS course fit? I don't know. Where does this women's studies course fit? There's a guide on AAMC website that will help you with that. But I think it really comes into play when we're talking about the sciences. You have to include all your science classes in there, and you can't include courses that really clearly aren't in the sciences. The difference for the DO schools is they don't include math in their science GPA. So that's one difference with them as well. So this is what the summary, coursework summary section looks like. Average number of courses entered 52, average number of schools are 2 to 3, so that's for applicants. Then you move on to the work activities section. So you should be thinking about your list and what you're going to include on there. You have a maximum of 15 entries. You can enter 3 additional date ranges for repeated activities, so you don't have to repeat, let's say you play volleyball. You don't have to take up 3 sections for volleyball. You can list it once and list the time frames that you did it, or if you had a summer experience that you went back to, you could just list it once. Sometimes people have more than 15 activities, and then you have to be creative about how you're going to fit them in to the list. Each activity has a short description, and you can identify 3 as your most significant activities. And you should really think about what you feel are your most significant activities, what mean the most to you, not what the medical schools will be impressed with. Oh, I think I should list this clinical experience because they're going to really like that this was my most meaningful activity. But I really enjoyed tutoring for 4 years. List your most meaningful activities. The application is an opportunity for the medical school admissions folks to get to know you better. And they want to know the real you, right? And so it's going to come off more genuine if you're honest in the application and not trying to impress them. It's still impressive. They're still going to see all of the things that you were involved in, but it's okay if one of your most meaningful activities isn't medically related. That's okay. So there's a maximum of characters that you can enter for the shorter descriptions as well as the longer descriptions, and they're going to want a contact for each of your activities. And some of your activities you might not have a specific contact. You could list college activities. Sometimes maybe you might list me as the contact, for example, if you got a prize or a fellowship. It's unlikely that they're going to check in with the contacts, but it would just be someone who could verify that you were part of the experience that you're listing on the application. So I talked about this a little bit, how you can enter up to 4 separate date ranges. You can also enter future end dates up until the start of matriculation. So this year it would be August 2015. So if you're entering an activity that you'll have this summer, you could enter in a future date. You're going to specify the total number of hours you spent on the activity. Another important thing, that so you don't have to worry about how you're entering them. They are listed in the order in which you're entered, but the medical schools can sort them. So it doesn't matter what order you enter them in because they can sort them however they want to see them during the application review. So letters of evaluation. You know that we collect letters of recommendation on your behalf. We require 3 from Vassar faculty, 2 from the sciences. They can all be from the sciences. You can have additional letters from Vassar faculty, and you can have letters from outside of Vassar. We wanted you to request those letters by March 1st. If you haven't requested the minimum of 3, please do so. The reason why we have the earlier deadlines is so that the letters are here by June when you're submitting your primary application. So we're recommending that you submit your primary app in June or early July. The MCAT score completes the primary. The composite letter goes with the secondary applications. Your advisor can't write your composite letter unless the letters are here. It takes time for the letters to come in. So we have the minimum of 3. We suggest a maximum of 6 so that we stress quality over quantity. So you want to get those requests in, and you can monitor whether or not we have the letters on Moodle. And if you haven't been in there yet, I'll show you later on where that is in Moodle. What's going to happen is your pre-med faculty advisor is going to take those letters and compile them into a composite, quoting liberally from the individual letters of recommendation, sometimes quoting them in their entirety, sometimes attaching them in their entirety. However, the best way to present your package is, that's how your advisor will compile that composite letter. And we have your best interests at heart. We want to support you as strongly as possible. So the advisor writes the draft of the letter, and then it goes to the committee. The committee, at least 3 members of the committee weigh in and provide comments and feedback. Then it goes back to the advisor, and the advisor finalizes it. Then it comes to me, and I look at it. And then Jean and I package it. Jean is my assistant. For those of you who don't already know, you should know. She's a critical part of this process. We package it and make it available to the medical schools. So when you're in AMCAS, you're going to indicate that you have a committee letter, and you're going to list your faculty advisor as the author of that committee letter. You're not going to list the individual letters of recommendation. You're going to list the committee letter and your faculty advisor as the author. So this is what the information is going to ask you. Then you're going to get a letter request form that you need to provide to us, to Jean. It has your AMCAS ID on it and your letter ID, and that's how AMCAS is going to match up that composite when it comes in. It looks like this. So I'll have your identifying information. It has the letter ID and the letter type. So it'll say committee letter on here. Your letter ID is on here, which we'll include on your composite. You can email this to us as a PDF. So after you fill out all the information, there'll be an option for you to get it as a PDF. You'll email it to Jean, jewander@vassar.edu. I'm going to send you all of this information in emails, too, as we get through the process, but it helps to know now what to expect. You'll indicate in the application who you want your composite letter to go to. This is just here so that you know that many medical schools require that letters of evaluation are on official letterhead and bear the signature of the author. Ours will be on our letterhead and it will have a signature. It will also have your AMCAS ID number and the letter ID. So here you'll see you're going to assign the letter to certain medical schools. All the medical schools are going to get your composite letter. So for people who are applying to MD, PhD programs, we write a composite letter. If you're applying both MD and MD, PhD, we write a composite letter for the MD programs. We write a composite letter for the dual degree program, and then we send all of the letters in their entirety as a packet to the medical schools because that's what the PhD programs want. So in that case, and there are a few people who are in that situation, you would need 3 letter IDs, one for the composite, MD composite, one for the MD PhD composite, and one for the letter packet. But that's only for people who are applying to the dual degree. And then you're going to assign which schools you want to get the letters. It's your responsibility to assign that composite to the medical schools. We don't have access to this. We don't have control over where the letter goes. Once it's posted, the medical schools that you've assigned it to will have the letter immediately. So once it's done, it'll go there. The medical schools will have access to it. This portion of the application is your personal statement, and we've provided the Writing Essentials book for you to help you with the personal statement. It cannot be duplicated, even though it's Xeroxed. I got permission from my national organization to use that for this workshop only, so it's not something that should be duplicated and shared broadly. Only the people in attendance here can have that, but that should help you. There are also resources on Moodle. Pauline and I are here to help with the personal statement, as is your advisor. Matthew Schultz in the Writing Center is available to give you feedback on your personal statement over the summer. So he's the director of the Writing Center. You can email him. So you have lots of people that you can send your statement to and get feedback. The statement isn't something that you write overnight. It's something that's crafted over a period of time. It's your voice that you're giving to the application that the medical school admissions folks are going to hear for the first time. They're going to see your transcripts. They're going to read your letters of recommendation, other people's opinions and perceptions of how good of a medical student you'll make and how good of a doctor you'll be. But this is your opportunity to tell your story. If you are applying to the dual degree, you have 3 essays: the personal statement, the why do you want the MD PhD, and a statement about your research experience. If you're going to take the MCAT after you submit the application, or if you're going to retake the MCAT, you want to indicate in the application when you're going to take it so that the medical schools know to expect a score or another score. Otherwise, they won't know that you're retaking it. You can go in after you submit the application and change that as well. So there's an opportunity for you to go in and change the date if you need to, or if you get a score that you're not exactly happy with and you want to retake it and you've already submitted your application, you can go in and indicate that you're going to take it in the future. If you're going to take a late June MCAT, so we recommend you take the MCATs by the end of June, because it takes 30 days to get the scores, and the MCAT completes the primary application, and medical schools work on rolling admissions, so you want to apply early. Early is better. If you're going to submit an application in late June, you can submit the app before you get your scores so that it begins processing. And you, in order to submit the app, you only have to indicate that you're applying to 1 school. You can always go in and add more schools, and it doesn't reprocess. Once it's processed, it's processed. So if you say, okay, I know that I'm going to apply to my state schools, but I'm not taking the MCAT till the end of June. I'm going to submit the MCAT application indicating my state schools, and when I get my MCAT scores, I'm going to add additional schools. And you can do that. And then it'll enter the processing phase, which can take time. So if you're taking a late June MCAT, I would recommend that you think about submitting your application before you get your score, at least to one school. Then there's a certification statement at the end that you'll have to click off of boxes saying that this is your work and you understand the rules and regulations. There is a application essentials guide that you can read to help you complete the application. Please look at that. I'm happy to answer questions that you have. When you ask me a question, I'm going to look in the essentials guide for the answer. So, I mean, some things, yeah, I do know off the top of my head over years, but I probably still consult the guide because I want to make sure nothing's changed since last year. So there's lots of resources for you to take ownership of your application and answer some questions on your own. If you're still really unclear about something, I'm happy to walk you through it. But, you know, I do ask that you read the essentials guide first, and then if you're still not sure, then ask me. So after you submit the application, it goes into this processing phase. And you enter the verification queue. Now they have to have all of your transcripts in order to verify the application. And they're basically going to take your transcript and look at what you entered and make sure everything is entered appropriately. And depending on the time of the year, of the summer that you submit the application will impact how long it takes for the app to process. And it can take up to 6 weeks. So these are the number of business days it took to complete verification the past 2 years, and you can see it's a normal curve. In early June, it doesn't take that long. It might get verified in a couple of days. But once you start getting into July and August, then that's when the peak season is, and it's going to take longer for that app. So they just have thousands. There were, I think, close to 43,000 people applied to medical school last year, so they have to verify all those applications. So this is another reason why getting your app in early is better. You don't have to submit your application the day submission opens, though. It's okay. Anytime in June or early July is still early. You don't have to get in the first week of June if you're not ready. Early is good, but error-free is better. You want to proofread and make sure that everything is in order. You don't want anybody to make impressions about you because the app was submitted carelessly. So there are very few things you can change after you submit, which is why it's important to proofread. You can go in and update the application. The only things that you can update are you can add schools, you can add MCAT dates or change them, you can add letters of reference. So it is possible, let's say you have a summer experience and you want to get a letter at the end of the summer after the composite has been submitted, you can add a letter at that time, and we'll send it. You'll still go through the same process. You'll request it through the pre-med office. We'll get the letter in your file, and if you want it to go to all the schools that you applied to, we can use the same letter ID and have it appended to the composite. The medical schools will be notified that there's a new letter, and they'll get it. If you get a letter and you only want it to go to certain schools, for whatever reason, then you need to create a new letter ID, and we would upload it, and then you would indicate which schools you want that letter to go to. But it is possible to add letters after you submit the application. The other thing that you're able to change, it probably tells you all of this on the next page, is your date of birth. I don't know why you would change your date of birth, but your contact information, the letters, the next MCAT. Yeah, so you can change your contact information, and but you can't fix typos, and you can't add activities. And you're going to have an opportunity to give the medical schools more information in the secondaries. You're not going to be able to get everything into the primary application, and our interns will tell you more about that when we get to them. So save the drafts of your personal statements that you write. And what doesn't make it into the final personal statement could potentially make it into a secondary application. So like I said before, I think 109 medical schools do criminal background checks, and you'll be alerted about that. If you want to, you'll get a copy of that, and if you want to challenge it, you can. And so if this is something that you need to talk about, we can talk about it. But just know that almost all of medical schools are now doing criminal background checks. This is important, something you might not know. Medical schools cannot view the number or names of other schools that you have applied to. So they don't know where you're applying. Allopathic schools don't know if you're applying to osteopathic schools and vice versa. Medical schools, after February 10th, have access to the multiple accept data. So they can see other schools to which an applicant has been accepted and is holding an acceptance decision. They can't see the schools that you have applied to only if you've been accepted. That's what they can see, the multiple accept data. And then the National Acceptance Report goes out on April 1st, and that lists all the applicants with a current acceptance or matriculation action. There are traffic rules for applicants that you should review. You have to make a decision by May 15th if you're holding multiple acceptances. After May 15th, that's when a lot of waitlist movement happens, because right now people can still be holding seats at more than one school, but in a couple days they're going to have to decide which school they're going to. I mentioned the fee assistance program. If you think that you qualify for that, if you're on financial aid here, then I would recommend you apply for this. It's a reduction in the MCAT registration. You get some MCAT prep resources. You get free access to the medical school admissions requirements book. You get a waiver of up to 15 medical schools. So it's a nice program for people who qualify. And then these are some other resources that they have. You probably know about the Medical School Admissions Requirements book. It's been released. The information that you want is online, so if you're going to buy it, you want to buy the online version with the hard copy. I think it's about $30. It has information about the acceptances, the GPAs and MCAT scores of the last cycle, median MCAT and GPAs, has lots of ways of sorting information. It's a good place to start to look for a medical school, because you can look at the stats, and then you can look at special characteristics that a medical school has, if they accept out-of-state applicants, what the tuition is, where people go on to residencies. So it's a nice place to start looking at medical schools. And then there are some other resources on my website that, and in that blue book that I gave you when you opened up your folder, that some other things to think about when you're looking at which schools you're going to apply to. So I was just talking about I talked about some of these things before, about the course classification guide, the AMCAS GPA guidelines. They tell you how they calculate the GPA on the AAMC site, so you should check it out. The instruction manuals, the video tutorials, they really try to help you to complete the application. So there's a lot of resources. So this is the Moodle site. On the Moodle site are announcements, documents and tips, information about osteopathic schools, writing a personal statement. There's stuff for the dual degree, dentistry resources, events off campus, so open houses. I don't want to email you every time a school tells me that they're having an open house. Put it on there. Financial aid and scholarships. I do work a lot in the Moodle site in the summer to put information on there. I hope that you will use it as a resource, because I'm not going to be emailing you all of the stuff that comes across my desk, and you'll always have access to it. The news forum is probably the most helpful resource, because that's where all of the emails are archived that I send out to you, and I try to use subjects that will allow you to easily identify an email that I've sent out. So you can go in there. If you said, oh, she sent me an email and I remember she said something about the conversion for credit hours and units, then you can go in there and look. The other really important part of Moodle is the ability to track your letters of recommendation. So in the gradebook function, I had to modify this a little bit because, you know, it's a screenshot. You'll see the list of the people that you've requested letters from, and then you'll see next to it a yes or a no. If it says yes, we have the letter. If it says no, we don't. If you don't see the person's name there, then we probably haven't requested the letter. Down at the bottom, you'll see who your pre-med advisor is. So we want you to check here to see and monitor your file to see when your letters are coming in. You can send people gentle reminders to submit your letters of recommendation. Remember, the letters are due on June 1st, so people have time still to get them in. It's unlikely that a flood of faculty letters are going to come in the next couple of days. The faculty are busy right now, with finals and grading and finishing up the semester. So I would wait to start reminding them until June 1st or right after that. The other important thing you need to know, and I'm almost done with this part of the presentation, is the composite letter queue. So how do you get in line for a composite letter? Each advisor has a load of advisees that they have to write letters for, and like I said, it's a process. We don't write composite letters overnight. There's a lot of care taken in writing the composite letter. The advisor writes the draft. It goes to the committee. Committee members are also writing their drafts. Now they're also reading other letters of other pre-med advisors and weighing in. And then it goes back to the advisor who finalizes it. Then it comes to me, and I look at it. And then sometimes it could go back if we have questions. We want to make sure that it's in, supporting you as strongly as possible. That's why it takes time. Just like your personal statement takes time. It's not something that they crank out overnight and just send off. We care about that composite letter. So how do you get in line for your advisor to prioritize your letter? Your application has to be processed by AMCAS. So that means it's been submitted and it's gone through the verification process. Because if it's not processed, the medical school doesn't even have your application yet. So they don't need your composite letter. They don't even have your primary app. So it has to be processed by AMCAS, and your file has to be complete. Your letters have to be in the file in order for your advisor to write the composite. So those two things have to happen in order for you to enter the queue. Once you enter the queue, it can take 3 to 4 weeks for the composite letter to be written because it takes time. So it's better to apply early. Early is better. All of these things impact the timing of the application. If your file is complete, it's not uncommon for an advisor to start working on your composite letter. Sometimes your composite letter is done before you even enter the queue, but that's not a guarantee. That's just if your file is complete and your advisor isn't working on someone who's in the queue who's been prioritized, then they want to chip away at their work over the summer too. Remember, this is a volunteer committee, and they are doing research over the summer and maybe trying to take a vacation if that's possible. So they're working hard to try and get this work done too. We want to be done before school starts. We do not want to be writing committee letters in September. It's late. We want everything done early, just like you want everything done early. So the best way to ensure that things happen in the time that you want them to is to take responsibility for your application and submit it and stay on top of the file and make sure that your letters come in. So, and like I said, you can monitor the status of your application on that front page. It'll tell you if your app has been processed. So some things are out of your control, right? When the letters get in the file, the time frame that it takes for the application to get processed. But if you stay on top of things and try to get things in early, like the requests, then the more likely the other things will follow. So I'm going to turn it over to the pre-med interns. I'm going to have them move over here, and I'm going to, hopefully, we'll see if I can switch this. Chad's not here now, so I have to see how I can get out of this. And I'm not a Mac user. Escape, right? Who can help me minimize this screen? One of my interns, I'm sure. Yeah. What are all these buttons down here? Yeah, why don't you get a snack or take a quick break?
Minimize.
How do I get this? I want to
yellow-
closed.
The yellow one.
This is minimized. This I don't need, right?
No.
There we are. So you'll sit in front of the camera. Don't worry, you can just look straight ahead. You don't have to look at the camera.
Okay.
Okay.
My water.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's
That's
hers.
fine.
This one's mine.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna let the interns talk about their experience applying, because they're the real experts here. I haven't been through the application process, they have. So, introduce yourself, take over.
Hi, I already know some of you. I'm Mia.
Fatima.
And so we're the interns, and we just want to talk about a few things and share our experiences or mistakes maybe. Let's start with school selection. I initially sent out a primary application to over 25 schools and ended up sending out secondaries to around 20. I think each secondary took a lot longer than I expected to, and if I were to do it again, I probably would have applied to less schools and spent more time on each application.
The way I selected schools, I first did it through geography, and then I narrowed it down based on whether they were rural, suburbs, urban. It also helps to search on the site and see what kind of curriculum they have, because sometimes you might be interested in a different type of way they teach. I only applied to osteopathic schools. Originally, I was going to apply to both MD and DO schools, but then I realized that I really just wanted to concentrate on the DO schools. But a lot of schools have new problem-based learnings, or they pretty much give you lectures through videos that you could watch on your own, and when you come to class, it's mostly they give you cases, they review different scenarios, etc. So they use the class time for that. So a lot of schools are doing that. So if you're interested in that or not interested in that, that's a good thing to look at. I originally applied to 12 schools, but I sent secondaries to about 5. Because also with the DO schools, you only get 3 schools that you on your financial aid, as opposed to the 15 through the allopathic schools. And there's also not as many, there's 100 plus on the MD schools and about 30 something in DO schools. So that was also a factor.
Yeah, and applying is expensive.
Yeah.
You have to pay for every application you send out. So it's kind of in your best interest to narrow down your school selection a little bit.
And they have a range of different secondary application fee. They could be anywhere from $50 or $200. So it really depends, and it's also something to take into consideration if you're applying to a lot of schools. So what's the next?
Timing. So I sent in my primary on July 7th, which I guess is still considered early, and I found that the whole primary part of the application still took longer than I expected. Actually, every phase of the application took longer than I expected. And writing about your activities, especially the ones where you only have a few sentences, trying to sum up your whole activity or a year's worth of work in a few sentences is really hard. And I would give yourself a lot of time to do that and to put effort into writing about what you've done.
One of the things to consider if you're considering osteopathic schools is that for most schools, they either recommend a letter from a DO or require a letter for a DO. So that's also something to take into consideration. If you're thinking about those schools, is to shadow a DO as soon as you can, because a lot of the schools are going to want a letter from them. I submitted my application about mid-July, and I took my EPCAN in June. But as Mia said, the essay took a lot longer than I expected, because you got to consider that the people who are reviewing your application are also doing other things in the summer. They can't get to it right away, and you want as many people as you can to review it, just so that they catch mistakes. And for example, Lisa and Pauline have read many essays, so they know what other people have put in the past and what they're putting to make you different than other applicants. And also you want to submit as many as your peers as you can, because they know you, they know the type of person you are, so they can help you into getting your voice out and stuff.
Yeah, I started off the personal statement process by making a blank document and just writing down thoughts, writing down ideas. If I had a few sentences that were just running through my head, even if I didn't know what I was writing about, I would just get them out on paper. And then I talked to a lot of my friends, I talked to my family, kind of ask them, like, why do you think I'm going to be a good doctor, or if I am going to be one? And just tried to get to the essence of, like, why I was going through this process. And it's hard. It's hard to be, like, really honest with yourself, but I think that's what you're trying to get through. You're trying to get, like, the most genuine version of yourself across to the medical schools.
Also, another thing to consider why Lisa stresses submitting the application so early is because the verification process takes such a long time. Even though I submitted my application like mid-July, I didn't get secondaries until like early September, which can like start conflicting with like school and stuff, which is also why I like applied to less schools than I anticipated, because like secondaries just take up a lot of time. Like you think you can reuse essays, but you really can't. They're like specific to each schools most of the times.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of schools want to know exactly why you're applying to that school. And when every school kind of has a similar mission statement, it becomes really apparent when you're copying and pasting from another place versus when you know specifically about a certain school. So like if you know students there, if you've done extra research about what they're doing or about what's happening at a school, that's a good thing to put into the secondaries. But yeah, they take a really long time, and I think the schools want a quick turnaround with them too. So I would even like start them early. On the Moodle site, we have a bunch of the actual secondary questions for schools listed, and if one of the schools you're applying to is there, I would think about what you're going to say in that secondary, because the essays are really short. Like they'll be like 250 or like 150 words, and that's not a lot of space to get across why you should be selected.
But a lot of the schools also let you submit secondaries before they verify your primary. Like they have a spot where you could still submit it if you want to as well.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I had to do a lot of my secondaries while I was at school, and that was really difficult. It's like it's more than doing another class. It's like taking 2 courses. So definitely allow yourself time to get those done. And then interviews, right? I liked the interview process. Interviewing's the best part. They already like schools already like you. That's why they've brought you back. And it's kind of where you really get to show who you are and why you're special. And that's so much easier to do when you're speaking than over an essay.
So pretty much the way I thought of interviews that somebody like explained to me is like they know you on paper, that what they want to see is like your bedside manner, like how are you in person, how will you be when you're a future doctor. So they're like, with DO schools, they tend to be a lot friendly, and I've never had an experience where they really probe you ethically or anything like that. They just really want to know about you. They ask you questions like, tell me more about yourself, like what do you do for fun, what do you do to be involved with the community and stuff like that. It's really questions that you don't have to be nervous about, and they're really good about like when like you get to the interview process, they have admissions people and even sometimes the dean that comes to talk to you and pretty much helps you calm your nerves and talk to you about like the overall like experience of being at the school and stuff like that. I haven't had experience with the new form of interviews. There's like MMI interviews, but I have had experience with group interviews, which are kind of another interesting point. Because like you're sitting with like 8 other people and you're just sort of bouncing ideas off each other and answering to their questions. And sometimes it's open files so they know you beforehand, and sometimes it's closed so like they haven't looked at your application before the interview.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think preparing a lot for them, going through every part of your application, making sure you know what you're going to say about each activity you do, looking up classic interview questions. If you've done that before, it makes the whole experience so much easier. You'll go into it more relaxed and you come off a lot better that way. And the what you do for fun question, every school I interviewed at asked that. I think they really want to know that you can be like a normal student who can go out, be social, have activities outside of applying to medical school.
Also something important to think about is like to have a question or two to ask the school so that it shows that you're interested and you took time to research the school, so that they actually like think you're serious about your application there.
Yeah, I asked all of my interviewers, like, why do you believe in this school? Why are you still working here? If at 2 of the schools I interviewed at, they didn't have people from the admissions committee, they had actual professors doing the interviews. So I asked them, like, why are you still here? What do you like about this institution? Why were you selected to, like, be part of this interviewing process? And I think that was a good way to kind of figure out what was special about each school.
Yeah, you got to think about it. That's not, they're not only interviewing you, but you're interviewing them. So you want to ask, why you would fit in there, and like what it'll help you like in the process, especially like when you have to make like acceptances or deposits to secure your place. It also is another form of money involved, securing places and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and there definitely are schools that you'll fit at better. Like, the school I'm going to has a class size of 65 people, I think, which I really like, compared to other schools which might have a class of 200 people. So there are a lot of things to think about when you're picking a school.
Personal statement.
I think I covered everything about the personal statement.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions?
What kind of questions do you have for us, for interns who've been through it or about the process?
Can you choose your interview dates, or do they?
They give you like a choice between 2 or 3 dates, but usually it depends because it's rolling application. It could be at any point, like within the cycle, and whether like they looked at your application yet or they put it on hold and then went back to look at it. It really depends.
I had one school let me choose out of an entire calendar, which was great, and then 2 schools gave me a specific date and were very certain, like, try to make it on this date.
Sometimes they'll let you reschedule once, but more than once, they're not. They don't look favorably on that rescheduling.
How soon after your interview did you hear back from the schools?
Well, I started to submit secondaries like September. Some of them didn't require an essay, so I submitted those like immediately. But then I got interviews from like October to December, and then I submitted an application later in the cycle, and I had one recently. So it could be at any point in your school year, in the school year.
Yeah, and then from hearing back from the interviews, one school told me a week later, which was awesome and just like really, really nice of them. And then the other 2 schools were 4 to 6 weeks.
Usually, like, they're pretty good about like responding pretty early, like around 2 weeks.
Okay.
For most schools, some schools do take a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it varies.
So is that advantageous? This
I would say so, probably. Yeah.
Because then they have seats to offer.
The other thing about applying early, in addition to fewer seats become more competitive, as they make offers, they also give away any scholarship money that they have. So later in the cycle, they have less funding to offer students in terms of scholarships and awards. So if people are getting offers at this stage in the game, they might say, we can give you a seat, but we don't have any money to give you because they use it all up. Once it's gone, it's gone. And some people are still waiting to hear. Fatima just went on an interview last week, so it's not uncommon for it to go all the way into late. I had someone interview in mid-May once for a seat. It's later. Fewer interview invitations are going out right now, but a lot of people. So there are different classifications that you could enter. You could get accepted or rejected, or you could be put on hold, or you could be waitlisted, or you could be an alternate. And so on hold means that they're going to put you on hold. They're going to put your application to the side. They're going to wait until they see more applications, and then they're going to consider you. It's not a rejection. They're just saying, okay, we're interested, but we're going to see what the rest of the pool looks like. Then waitlist or alternate means if we have enough seats, we'll invite you to come in to the class. But they're not going to tell you where you are on the wait list. And most of the wait list movement happens after May 15th, which is that date that people have to decide. Because there are some people who could be holding 5 or 6 seats at different schools. So once those seats become available, then they'll start Did I miss any of the categories?
I don't know. I got all of those too.
But
So.
also, like, another reason to consider why you need to narrow down your schools and not apply to so many is because if you want to hold your seat, and let's say you got a response from one school that you're sort of interested in, but you have a lot of schools that you would really love to go to, like, you have to consider, like, the money involved that you would put down to secure those seats. Like, it's expensive. I think one of the deposits I had was, like, one was, like, 1,500 for the first deposit and, like, 750 for the next deposit.
So
And
that's
you
the difference between
don't usually
Yeah.
get it back.
That's the difference between DO and allopathic schools, which is really not this live broadcast.
Yeah.
The allopathic schools don't make you put deposits down like that before May 15th.
Yeah,
You have
my
to put
deposit
them-
was 100, so
And is it refundable if you
it's
don't go?
it's refundable up until May 15th, I
15th.
believe.
So the DO schools sometimes make you put hefty deposits down and they're not refundable. So that is a difference.
That's huge.
It's unfortunate. You had a question?
What were some of like the tougher questions in interviews that you sort of weren't expecting or hard to answer?
I didn't really have questions I wasn't fully expecting. I got a huge packet from Lisa, which had a ton of questions, so I don't think I was pretty much surprised by anything. I think talking about the negative aspects of yourself is hard, and a lot of schools ask that. That was one thing I kind of, I won't say stumbled with, but I had to work on my answers to a lot. And then also being asked why you want to be a doctor, because you're aware that like they're asking a ton of other people this question too, and it's hard to find a response that you feel is like both unique and genuine. So I think it could be a good idea to practice that one a lot.
Any tough questions?
I think the only tough question, like, is like one that I misunderstood, where they're like, asked me about medical experience with medical disparities, and for some reason, like, I took it as medical calamities, but they're usually like, don't call you out on it, and like, anything like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't really, a lot of the questions is like stuff you already know the answer to and stuff like that. The only interesting one was like the group interview, but because like other people are with you, like you can sort of bounce off their answers, and like think about things you wouldn't have said before and stuff.
Also, I guess being prepared to talk about any research or work you've done, especially if your interviewer knows about that field, they'll definitely ask you about it. In one of my interviews, we got very off topic from me, and we're talking a lot about healthcare for women in rural India, and I had like 4 or 5 questions about that. So that was pretty difficult because it got very detailed.
And for the MD PhD programs, you need to be prepared to talk about your research. And you're going to talk, the interview day is going to be longer, you're going to have additional secondaries, and they're going to be focusing on research because you're applying to be a research scientist.
Or like any dips in your grades. If you did badly in one class, they're going to ask you about that, and it's good to have a response to explain that.
Other questions?
You were talking about a new form of interview, MMI. What's that?
The multiple mini interview. Many medical schools are moving towards this format of a multiple mini interview. So there are different formats of interviews. There are blind interviews where the interviewer doesn't have access to your application. They're just meeting you for the first time. They don't know anything about you. Then there are open file interviews where the interviewer has had access to your application and is interviewing you. They know your stats, your personal statement. Group interviews, one-on-one, a series of one-on-ones. The multiple mini interview is different altogether. It is a series of 6-minute interviews where there are scenarios presented. So there's actually a video of it on the Moodle site. If you go and look, you can see an example of it. It's pretty hilarious to watch. But you're there with other applicants, and everybody stands in front of a door, and there are 8 to 10 scenarios, and a bell rings, and you go in. There's a prompt on the outside that you read, and you have 2 minutes to formulate your answer to that prompt, and then you go in and you have 6 minutes to deal with whatever the scenario is, and then a bell rings and you come out and you switch doors. And you get another prompt, you have 2 minutes to read it, figure out what you're going to say, and then go in. It could be a patient simulation where someone is in there and you're coming in and they're the patient and you have to deal with them. It could be some kind of conflict resolution situation. So there could be an actor in there. Pauline, what other kinds of scenarios could there be? Ethical dilemma.
There's ethical dilemmas, and those also can be either a conversation where, there's the ethical dilemmas in front of you and the person on the other side of the table is going to be arguing one side or the other. Or it could be a situation where you walk in and there is an ethical dilemma in front of you and you have to sort of live through it. Those are fun. I like doing those. So there could be, I don't want to say political, but it's like some of those questions where,
Logical reasoning.
yeah, logical reasoning. What do you think about this situation, or how would you handle this situation?
Right.
There's a lot of those kind of things.
Then there are some that
There's
are,
some essays.
yeah.
Yep, some written. So those you have to be prepared for. So you got to write on the fly.
Yeah. Some medical schools do a hybrid. Well, they'll do 6 MMI stations, and then the last one is a standard half-hour interview. Or one of the stations could be, why do you want to be a doctor? So you really don't know. Believe it or not, the applicants really like the MMIs. They freaked out about them at first, but then they come back and they say it was a great day, they had fun, it went fast. And the theory behind them is that, first of all, doctors have to make quick decisions. And oftentimes when you are in with a patient, you're not in there for a long time. You go in, you're diagnosing, you're getting to know somebody, and it's usually in like about 10 minutes that you spend with a doctor. And they have to come up with solutions in a short time frame. So it mirrors the doctor-patient relationship and how well you're able to build rapport quickly, think on your feet. The other thing is that when you have a traditional interview, whether it be 1 or 2, what if it's a bad interview experience? And then this person sort of holds your fate in their hands. The theory behind the multiple minute interview is that there's more than one person getting to interact with you. And if there's one bad interview or one bad mismatch between personalities, there are 6 or 7 other people who have also met with you. Or if you flounder in one of the scenarios, you have other chances to rebound from that. So that's some of the theory behind the MMI. It started in Canada a number of years ago, and over the last 2 years has really increased substantially in the U.S. medical schools. And there's lots of resources on Moodle. As we get them, we put them up on Moodle for you. And like I said, we're willing to do a mock. You have to be here for a mock MMI. That's the one downfall at the moment of applying after you graduate. But you can come back if you're local. So we have had people who are in the city come up to do an MMI. And we partner with the CDO to try and simulate that experience as much as possible and give you feedback about it.
I had a hybrid interview. I had 2 fake patient interactions where the actors were students at the school, and then a 20-minute interview. And the interactions and simulations, they're actually a lot of fun. It's pretty obvious, or for me, it was pretty obvious what you were supposed to do in the situation. I was going in not as a doctor, but somebody who was getting notes before the doctor was supposed to see the patient. And I had one person ask for more pain medicines, and one person ask for, I think, a note to get out of work. And it's they want to see how well you respond to the person, how professional you can be, and I guess if you understand what the patient is asking for in the first place. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's a nice change from sitting with one person and talking to them for an hour.
Do you know ahead of time if it's going to be an MMI or what kind of interview?
Well, I asked Lisa before all of them.
Yeah, you'll know ahead of time. Any questions?
On our transcripts, it has a section for AP credits. So
Mm-hmm.
do we include that on our application?
Yeah, you'll list AP credits as taken in the first semester of the freshman year. So I'll send out, it's in the tutorial, tell you how to do it, but I'll also send it. It's in one of the FAQs. But yeah, you can only list AP credit if it's listed on your transcript. It will not count if it's not listed on your transcript. If you're graduating and you want your AP credit listed on your transcript, you have to get it on there before you graduate. We will not add AP credit. Transcripts cannot be changed after you graduate. And that has come into play a couple of times. Like somebody took Chem 125 and they had Chem AP and they just never got around to putting the AP on their transcript, and then a medical school had a problem with the fact that it wasn't on there, and we can't change it. So Pauline's your lady if you want to get AP credit listed on your transcript. And if you have APs more than 4, and some of them are, sciences and they're not on there, you can swap out. If you have a history class and you want to put on a math class or physics or something, you can swap it out.
However, if you take the equivalent here at Vassar, you will not get it on your transcript. So if you get bio, for example, a bio AP and you take 105, you're not going to get both.
Other questions?
So how is a distinction made between like the science GPA and the overall GPA? How is it calculated, and how do each of them factor in?
It's calculated the same way, and if you go to AA and see on the AMCAS website, it'll show you how they do that. Same thing with AACOMAS, it'll show you how it's calculated. The science GPA for AMCAS is biology, chemistry, physics, and math. You're going to classify your courses into those categories. For AACOMAS, it's biology, chemistry, and physics, right? Makes up the science GPA. They don't include math in that. You're going to make a decision based on the content of the course that you were in, if you think it fits into one of those categories. And then they're going to calculate the GPA. They're going to make an objective decision about whether or not they think it fits. So, social psychology is not going to fit into the BCPM, but neuroscience, so it's a physiological psychology, they know will. So that's what I was saying earlier, make sure you are honest. Yeah.
Does it matter for biochemistry if you put it under biology or chemistry?
That's a good question. She asked if it matters for biochemistry if it's listed as chem or bio. It matters, it could matter if you're counting it as your chemistry course. If you have Chem 125 and that's your second inorganic chemistry, then it should be listed under the chemistry department to avoid any confusion. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. Because you'll have, probably, well, if you want it to count as your biology, then it should be listed as biology. Can that be changed, Pauline?
I'm sorry?
I don't know if the department can that be changed on the transcript when somebody's taken a course?
I think I know the answer to that.
Okay.
And the answer is no. It can't be changed.
But they can categorize it differently, right? When they're categorizing
In
classes.
AMCAS that you want it counted as.
Yeah. Even if it says biology, could they put it as a chemistry class? They accept that.
So, can you help me here? In the secondaries, I think it's it doesn't matter for the BCPM. It's going to be in the BCPM. So list it, whatever it's listed on your transcript. List it as whatever. List in AMCAS exactly how things appear on your transcript. List that in AMCAS. In the secondaries, does it ask you which courses you are using to fulfill requirements?
In the secondary application? Yeah. I remember that being part of the primary. I could be wrong. For the secondaries, I felt like I just had to fill out like basic demographic information and then respond to some essays.
So at some point in the application, it says though, which courses are you using for your chemistry?
They ask you to assign each course to each prereq.
So you'll assign it to the prereq.
But they could come back and say, we don't understand why you're using this bio class as chemistry.
They could.
And I don't think it's going to make or break you, but they could question it, and it could make the whole thing take a lot longer because they have to come back to us, and we have to then explain that it is actually a biochem.
And that would be at the secondary phase.
Right.
AMCAS doesn't care whether or not you met requirements for a medical school. They're just processing the application and sending it to the medical schools. Good question.
Oh, you said that you can select like which bio course you put as your prereq for bio. Does it have to be like 501, 506, or can you put like other?
It has to be with a lab, so 105 isn't going to satisfy the
Okay.
biology requirement.
Can I just
Yeah.
clarify about the biochemistry situation? I think they did this semester because how we did the registration. Remind anybody who took Chem 125 and was potentially on this pre-med track to verify with the registrar that they were registered for Chem 272 and not Biology 272, so that this would all be taken care of. And I'd have to look back in my email. I did talk to Colleen Mallet, and I believe she said you couldn't change it after
Mm-hmm.
the semester was done.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think that that's something that, everybody needs to be aware of.
Yeah.
It just will make everything easier.
Right. And I can add to it just like so nobody's really worried. It's come up once, and it was with an offshore school, and it worked out. But to make things, I guess the whole idea is make things smooth as possible. Is that
I mean, it
what we're trying to do?
is a class that's cross-listed, and so one could, explain
Argue,
to
right.
a reasonable person that it's the same thing, but, just to avoid that.
Right. That's what we're trying to do. Make everything as seamless as possible. If you have a problem with a medical school and they're questioning something, just get in touch with me, and we're here to help you sort it out.
So if we're gonna use like biochemistry as the second part of the chemistry requirement, and the school requires biochemistry, can we use that course for both requirements, or we can just use it for one and not the other?
It's a good question. I think it would probably depend on the school. I can't imagine that they're asking you this in AMCAS, because AMCAS is.
You're right. I actually did have to do all of this for only one of my secondaries, where I had to assign what class was for each prerequisite. And for that school, they didn't require biochemistry. What they had was, they were like, if you've taken physics, list your physics classes. If you've taken intro bio, list your intro bio. If you've taken biochem. So it was less rigid that way.
Yeah, it's got to be in the secondary applications,
Yeah.
because medical schools have different requirements. So, technically, you can't use one course to satisfy two requirements. Technically, you can't use biochem to satisfy the second semester of biology and the second semester of chemistry. Not many schools require biochemistry. A lot of them recommend it. So. That'd be okay. Other questions? Do our advisors want to add anything about personal statements, advice? Haven't been through
Talk to your doctor. Everyone's complaining about
Oh.
I'll just make a comment about the letter writing queue. Get your letters in. I mean, I personally will not write your letter until everything's done. So you may have to hound people. And I had one student who, like, up to the very end, and I actually had to go hound the one person, and I don't like doing that. You hound, get the letters in so that I can write your letter. So, yeah. I'm happy to do it as soon as everything's done. I will sit down and, take the time to get it done, but I'm not going to put it, because other people have related to me that, you start writing the letter, and then, I'm not gonna.
Right. Right.
I will write it, and I will do my super best, but I want that all finished. So that's my comment.
And if I can comment on that, the hounding process, I had to get a letter from somebody who was abroad, and I studied abroad in India, and that took a lot longer and actually held up my application more than I wish it had. everybody who you're getting letters from is really busy and probably writing letters to a bunch of other people, and it's really awkward, but you kind of just have to keep emailing them and be on top of them because it's your future. And I felt like I was annoying some people at times, but you just need to make sure that like everything's moving with your application.
And I think faculty appreciate being reminded of things. If you ask them for a letter on March 1st, and
in terms of like recording our classes, if you're taking classes in a row and you receive just the pass, do you mark those pass fail? Or?
So about this recommendation queue thing, so our primary is not done until that's in, right?
No.
So it's totally separate.
The primary application, the MCAT completes the primary application. You submit the application. The composite letter is going to come after you submit the primary application. It goes with the secondary applications. So yeah, don't hold up your submitting your application waiting on letters of recommendation to come in, because your composite letter is not going to be done until after your primary is submitted.
And approved, and like
Processed.
Right.
Yeah.
So can you have your primary like verified before your MCAT scores in, or?
Yes.
So you do want to submit primary as soon as possible, even though you don't have your MCAT score. That's
a good point. Your AMCAS primary application can be verified before the MCAT scores arrive. If you're taking an MCAT in May, I would wait to see the score before you submit. The only time I really think you should submit is if you're taking an MCAT in late June. Then I would submit the application before seeing the scores. But the application is going to process quickly in the beginning of June if you're submitting it in June. You saw the curve. It processes within days, sometimes within 2 or 3 days. In the beginning, in July it's going to go up, August, September it's going to peak. That's when it's going to take the longest time for the application to process.
Sorry, I'm a bit confused. So because you said MCAT scores complete
at the medical schools.
The primaries.
At the medical schools.
Okay.
So you can submit your AMCAS application and it can be processed and sent to the medical school before your MCAT score is received. But the medical school is not going to look at your application until the MCAT score arrives. Once it does, it'll be sent to the medical schools. That's why it's important for you, if you're submitting your application before you take the MCAT, that you indicate in the app when you're taking it. The medical school will get the application, they'll say, oh, taking the MCAT on June 6th. Put it over here. On June 6th, we'll, in July, we'll look at it again.
That's still better than waiting to submit primary and then take 3 weeks to get verified in July or something, right? Because
yes, the answer is yes. Because the verification process will be done pretty quickly, and then when the MCAT catches up to it, it's ready, it's done.
Right. And anytime you add additional schools, it doesn't go through a re-verification process.
Yeah.
Once time. Yeah.
What do you recommend regarding like our social media presence? Like it's like a lot of people talk about like deactivating your Facebook and like kind of becoming like invisible. Do you recommend that process? Is that like a true like thing to do, or is that just like?
It's a good point that you're bringing up. That also makes me think of like StudentDoctor.net, which is an informal, high anxiety site.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I was on that all the time, and it is just a bunch of really stressed out people. They have good answers, but a bunch of stressed out people.
And remember, they're your competition.
Mm-hmm.
So take what you hear in those forums with a grain of salt, and don't get yourself worked up and upset about things like that. It's related to what you're saying. It's not answering your question. How your email username, you don't want it to be, use your Vassar email or something that has your name and isn't like Hot Lips at, People are going to make impressions about you. They have more qualified applicants than they have seats for. If there are things that they can, take you out of the pool for, then they'll take you out. I don't think, and Pauline, worked for many years in admissions and can probably answer this better than I can. I don't think they have time to Google you, but that doesn't mean that they don't have time. I wouldn't put anything that you wouldn't want your mom, dad to see on social media, you know.
Or on any of those chats, those doctor chats, because my boss used to check those things out all the time. And say, oh, this is what they're saying about us, and this is what, you know, ooh, I looked up this student. Go pull that person's file. I mean, I don't know that med schools have time to do that, like Lisa's saying, but there could be one or two of them that are just, you know,
random underworked.
Exactly. You know, busy guys, you know, somebody who's just like really into that sort of thing. And who knows, maybe med schools are getting to the point where they're taking the time to really look through that stuff.
I did point out to a couple of applicants the picture that they had on their Gmail account. That they, you know, when I pointed out to the person, he wrote back and he was like, gosh, I forgot that was even there. And I was like, yeah, every time I get an email from you, I see this picture of you at a party. You know, it wasn't racy or anything like that, but it just was something that was for your friends, not for medical school admissions folks to see. So, you know, when you have your little profile picture in Gmail, you know, there was another applicant, and she looked adorable, but she was in her Halloween costume, and, you know, and it just didn't seem appropriate for a professional correspondence. So it's all those kinds of things if you don't want people to make a judgment about you. So I would say better safe than sorry. Could be conservative.
Right, if you were looking for a doctor and we found you online, would you want to be a doctor, your doctor?
That's a good point. When I'm looking for a doctor, I do some Googling.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see what they look like. I want to know, you know, there's all these different profiles. Yeah. And we all make snap judgments like, oh, no, I'm not going to that person. So that's a good point. I like that. Do you have anything else to add from an admissions person's perspective?
I mean, I think the one thing that you should try not to do is get too obsessed with one piece of your application. I think that's a huge pitfall, and usually it's with the numbers. So with your GPA or your MCAT score or a particular class, you can't do anything about those things once you finished it. Once you finish the class, it's over. Once you finish the MCAT, it's over. What you do have control over is your essay. It's what you write on your application. Making sure that you have everything covered and sort of look at yourself like a painting in a way. And this is the way I always explain the application process to people. It's like trying to build a picture of who you are based on a bunch of different colors. So each piece of your application is a little bit of a different piece of who you are, and if one of them's too heavy or too light, that's what they're looking at. Those are the things that they're looking at. They're not looking at the minutia on the face of it. Once they get a smaller pool of people, then they start looking at minutia, but you have no control over it at that point. So the best thing to do is to do your best and let them do their job.
Any other thoughts, questions? It's all overwhelming, and this is a lot of information. Just take it one step at a time. You know, I said to our interns before we started, I said, remember how you felt this time last year. And what did you say?
Stressed and strung out.
Anxious and nervous, and they made it. They you know, so it's a lot, but we're here to support you. And if you want to talk about anything at any point, I'm here all summer. The advisors are around. You know, we're here to support you. What kinds of things are you thinking about? What can you do to help you right now? Finals, I don't know, thesis, things like this. Okay.
Just actually one more question. So in terms of writing out our descriptions of activities, is brevity or kind of like how should we go about this? Should it be as brief as possible, or should we go
Question.
really as detailed as possible?
So it's not bullet points like a resume.
Mhm.
They're short paragraphs that are descriptive in nature. Do you want to comment on?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
There's not much you can fill out in the ones that are like not your most significant. Like you can only fill out like a certain amount of characters.
But I wouldn't try to reach the max of those characters because, like, I would guess that the schools can tell really easily if you're just trying to fill up space. If an experience wasn't very important and you don't have much to say about it, I feel like it would just be better to say the most important part and let it be. Because that way they might not get annoyed reading like a huge application.
So you want them to know what your contribution was to whatever the activity is, and maybe what the activity meant to you. If you're talking about research, they don't want to know what your hypothesis was and the details of the research. They want to know what role did you play on the team. I was going to say something else. So it's really about conveying to them who you are, and less about what the organization is about. But what I wanted to say is, if there are things that are specific to Vassar, you need to explain what they are. Like, don't just put VASC. They're not going to know what that is. Or Tonka. They're not going to know. You're going to have to, explain to them, what an acronym is, and make sure that they know what it was and what your contribution was.
And the personal statement is just one page, single space?
No, it's character limit. It's I think it's like 5,000 characters. 5,300. So it's very big.
It's less on a comma. The character.
I think it comes out to be like a page and a half.
Yeah.
Single spaced. Yeah, we have to. Did you want to finish up?
Yeah, just so with the most meaningful, is the other like 1350 characters supposed to be a reflection on the first 750, or is it just kind of continuation?
It's a continuation.
Okay.
And I'm glad you say that too, because you can talk about things that you list in your activities in your personal statement. You don't want to be redundant, so you're not going to rehash things, but you can refer to experiences that you've had that you've listed in your activities section in the personal statement. It's just, they complement one another, like a cover letter complements a resume.
So you want our activities to be more like resume, more factual based, like.
But they're not bullet points, they're paragraphs.
We should do
So it's a little bit like a resume, but expanded.
And it's like more I thought it should have been more personal. Like I tried to say why each experience was important to me, or like how it helped me develop, or like tried to think of how it reflected upon me more than just like what did you contribute.
Right.
You want to look at each of those pieces as complementing each other, like you were saying. So, for example, if you talk a lot about a particular internship, you don't need to rehash all of that in that little section for that particular experience. And if you do have a resume that you are allowed to put in there, you want to make sure that you do that succinctly, and it kind of gives them a history. And that way you don't have to go back in your essay and explain, I did this, in my second year at Vassar kind of thing. Or, because it's all in there. They can put it together.
Yeah.
So it says in the packet that essays vary in length, but 1/2 to 3/4 of the page might be considered average. So you said 1.5 pages is the maximum, but most people with assignments don't really reach that max.
The personal statement?
The personal statement, yeah.
Most people use the space.
Okay.
You don't want.
People have the opposite problem.
Yeah.
They've got so much they want to say, and they only have this small amount of space, and how do they whittle it down?
Yeah. But you don't have to try and fill up the activities section space if you're just being redundant, I guess is what Miriam is pointing out.
So after we graduate, we still have access to the world?
Yep. Any other final thoughts? Yeah.
Also, just in terms of what email you supply, does our Vassar email turn into a alum email after we graduate?
Your Vassar email is good for a year,
A year.
right?
And then it turns to them along. But you can also have it set up so that after that, for I believe a short period of time, it will bounce from your old email address to your alum before it disappears.
I think you could have it for 2 years. You like a city thing, some like reason to have it for another year, as it was discussed.
I believe you, I don't have
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it used to expire in August. Then I know it was a year. Any other questions? Okay, well, enjoy this week, 2 weeks that you have left, and let us know if questions come up, and good luck on your finals and the other things you have to do to finish up. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, girls.
Of course.
Helping us out.
Do you need help putting away